Hi, my name is Micaela, and I wanted to share some information with you on anxiety and what it is and how we can help with it. We say we have anxiety when we are worrying a lot, and anxiety is something that everyone feels from time to time. It's a normal part of life, but sometimes it becomes big and it becomes overwhelming. But there are lots of things that we can do to help with anxiety. So, how does anxiety affect us? Well, it affects our thoughts, it affects our bodies and the reactions we have, and it affects our feelings. It affects the way we behave. But we can use different strategies, different tricks to help us with anxiety in our thoughts, in our bodies, and in the way we react and behave. Anxiety can have many symptoms. These are the different things we see. Different people can have different symptoms. And people can have shivering, crying, going to the toilet a lot, having sweaty hands, feeling that your breathing is too fast or it's hard to breathe, having tight muscles, not being able to concentrate on things or keep your focus, not being able to remember things that you should be able to remember, being angry, maybe being sad, that worried feeling all the time. Sometimes we get clumsy when we're anxious. We trip over, we drop things, we knock things. Sometimes we can't sleep. And sometimes we get tummy aches or we need to go to the toilet more often. Maybe you can think of some more. Anxiety responses are what our bodies do when we're feeling anxious. So our bodies are very clever. They evolved over time to keep us safe. And when we feel we are in danger, our bodies put these responses into place. Some of the responses are fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and faint. And I will talk a little bit about them in a minute. We sometimes have very little control over our responses. They happen automatically. They're biological, they're in our body. Sometimes our bodies respond to things that aren't physically dangerous, but they're very unpleasant and they make us anxious. So let's look at fight, flight, and freeze. When we feel we are in danger, our bodies put some of these into place. You might feel one of them or more than one of them at a time. So some people would say, well, actually, I always go into a fight response when I'm anxious. And some people say, no, I go into a freeze response. So what is a fight response? It's when we feel angry and we stand our ground and we face the thing that's frightening us. We get ready to fight it. We can physically lash out, we can hit out, kick out, but we're going to stay and fight. When we're in a flight response, we want to run away. We want to get away from there as quickly as possible, away from the thing that frightens us. So we run or hide. A freeze response is where we become very still and we almost shut down. We get very quiet and we can't move because we're so frightened. Let's look at fawn and faint reactions. A fawn reaction is where you try and please the person who's maybe making you anxious. You try and do whatever you're being told to do because you want the situation to end. So you'll do whatever you're told. Faint means that you feel weak and sleepy. Your body gets very tired and it's almost like you're going to faint because you're so frightened that that's what your body is doing. These are some other signs that you might be anxious. So sometimes when people are anxious, the volume, that's how high or low you're speaking, changes, or how quickly or slowly you speak changes. Some people speak slowly, some people speak very quickly. When we're anxious, we need more control over things. We need to know what's happening, when it's happening, how it's happening. That becomes more heightened when you're anxious. Sometimes we hurt ourselves when we're anxious. We might bite ourselves. We might hit ourselves, maybe hit our head, things like that. And then we know we're really anxious. And this is your body trying to control things, trying to calm you down. We become more sensitive to noise and light when we're anxious. So you might find that every noise is too loud. You need to cover your ears. Every noise is making you annoyed. Or you might find lights are too bright. You have to squeeze your eyes or cover your eyes because everything is just too bright, all closing in on you. You might find you're chewing things more when you're anxious, or you're putting more things in your mouth. You might find you're doing more stimming when you're anxious. So you might be flapping your hands more, you might be jumping more, you might be running around more, flicking things more, whatever it is you do that your body does naturally and automatically, it's to calm you down. You might find you're more emotional when you're anxious. You cry more, you're more angry, you're more worried. Why do we have anxiety? So we all have it, it's natural, it's in our bodies. Some people, though, have more. And sometimes that's a genetic thing. It's just part of how you are made. It might be in your family that people are a little bit more anxious. That's part of your biology. Some people have experienced very frightening things and they will be anxious because of that, or they've been bullied. Some people are burnt out. That means they've worked too hard for too long and they need time to rest and recover. Some people get anxious because of sensory things. So you know your senses. You've got the 5 outside ones like your sight and your hearing, your smell, your taste and touch. You've got your sense of balance and you've got your sense of pressure. You've also got a sense inside your body which tells you how fast your heart is beating, if you're hungry, what feelings you're having, if you're thirsty, things that are happening in your body. Sometimes we can be very sensitive to things in the environment. Noises can make us anxious, as I said. Being in a busy place can make us anxious. And this can be very unpleasant. Some people get anxious because of uncertainty. They don't know what's happening and they don't know when things are going to happen. That can make some people very anxious. So we don't always know why we're anxious, but we can be prepared. We can learn about anxiety and we can use strategies to help with our anxiety, to keep it small, or we can use strategies when it gets big. Some of them are thinking strategies for the thoughts that we're having, and looking after our well-being is very important. Being mindful is a way of keeping yourself nice and calm in the moment. You're not thinking about all the things that happened in the past, and you're not thinking of all the things that are going to happen, because they are just thoughts and worries. So we try and focus on ourselves in this moment. We can learn about anxiety. That's a great way of starting. For our feelings, we can learn about how our feelings work. And for our body and reactions, there's a lot we can do to help us be calm. We can use sensory strategies to just help us calm down our senses. We can use exercise. We can use our stimming. And I'm going to tell you about belly breathing in a while. So, what can I do now? Well, these are some of the things we can do. Look around, look at your environment, look at where you are to see if it can be made more calm, more structured, more predictable. This means, can I make it quieter, more peaceful for me? Can I make it safer? Can people help me do that? Can I find out more about what's happening? Can I have a routine? We can look at our daily activities, things we do every day, to see if we can make our well-being better. So our well-being is just that we're well in our minds, well in our bodies, and well in our feelings. Can we make this a little bit better? Learn about anxiety is a good thing, as I said, and have a plan for when we're anxious We can practice our breathing and calming and thinking strategies, and we can get more help if it's needed. So, because the environment is so important in how our anxiety is, let's see if we can make changes. We can't do everything on our own, and other people will have to help because they're in our environment. So one thing we might think about is having somewhere safe and calm to go to, a haven if we need to. We can look at having routine. What's our routine like? Are we able to do things in an order that's good for us? Do we need to maybe look at having written things and reminders and lists of things to do? Because having things written down and being able to see them can take all that worry out of your head about what's happening next. Sometimes those things will change, but at least we have a good idea to help us predict what's happening next. Our well-being is very important, and a well-balanced day can help to keep the symptoms of anxiety down. So there are certain good things that we can do during the day that will help. Having a good diet, having a good sleep routine, having enough exercise and relaxation. These all help. The one thing though about anxiety is when you're very anxious, it's very hard to do the things that help. You just don't really feel like doing it. You're not motivated to do it. So you need to give yourself a little push, because that little push will help. The more you do, the better it gets. And also, people who are anxious mightn't want to eat, so it's hard to get that good diet. They mightn't be getting any sleep, so that's another difficulty, because if you're not getting enough sleep, you'll get more anxious. But let's see if there are any small changes that you can make in your day that can bring it down a bit and make things easier. Sugary foods and sugary drinks and caffeine can make anxiety worse. So if you take in a lot of sugar during the day, think about cutting it down. It will help. So one way of looking at whether we're doing enough good things in the day is to have a little list. Am I getting a good sleep? Am I having a good diet? If possible, make tiny changes. Am I having enough exercise and movement? These are very important for keeping anxiety down. Am I resting enough? Am I relaxing enough? Am I having enough fun? Am I doing my interests and hobbies? Because right now, if you are a very anxious person, you need to rest and recover. You need to put more fun in your day. Learning new things is a great help. So even if you don't feel like learning anything new, even looking at this is learning something. So there are little things you can learn or look at in the day. Connecting with people is very important. Talking to other people, just telling them what you're feeling and having some contact with other people. So that's, if you're doing that, well done. And as I said, routines are important, so try and follow good routines. And some people take medication to help with their anxiety, so do take it if it's needed. Having information on anxiety is good, as I said. So you're looking at this, so you're doing a great job. Our parents and carers can help us as well. Sometimes we can be anxious because we don't really know about the feelings in our body. So now might be a good time to learn about those and learn about how you can be calm and what calms you. We can learn about anxiety. There's a nice little YouTube video there for people who like to watch things. And there's a book for people who like to read things by a woman called Davida Hartman. It's a very good book if you like reading. So let's see about having a plan. The first thing to do if you feel you're anxious is just remember that's what it is. This is anxiety. I'm feeling anxious now. It will end after a while. So any feeling you have will go up, but it will always come down. It will always end. The same with anxiety. No matter how bad it feels, it will come to an end after a while. You can try in that moment when you're anxious to use a breathing technique or another calming technique. that will help you calm down, help that feeling to pass. It's nice to know that you can do something to help when you're anxious. If you're somebody who needs to run and hide, have an agreed place to go. So if you're in school or if you're at home, that people know when you're very anxious, you need to go somewhere. Maybe it's a tent somewhere. Some people use a tent, that you're going to go and you're going to get in there and you're going to wait till the anxiety passes. Take your time to recover. And be kind to yourself, because sometimes people feel anxious about being embarrassed and ashamed because of how they behave when they're anxious. Anxiety is not your fault. Remember, this is something your body does to keep you safe. So you're not feeling safe if your body is behaving like this. Anxiety is our body's way of telling us something is wrong. So think about what is making you afraid in your environment. It's often when we're outside of home that we feel it most. So something is making you afraid. Something is causing your anxiety. And it would be really good to tell your parents or carers, teachers or helpers what this would be, because really it would be great if they could change it, because you shouldn't be going somewhere where you're that frightened every day. Breathing is really important. What breathing does is it regulates your breath, it regulates your body, it regulates your emotions, and it helps you stay calm. So it really does help our nervous system to calm down when we do proper belly breathing. Here are some strategies that I've used. So there's one called smell the flower and blow out the candle. So you smell the flower and you imagine that you're blowing out a candle. And you can count in maybe for 4 or 5 and pause and count out. That can help do a nice even breath. Here's finger breathing and a nice visual from Sharon in Autism Journeys. You breathe up and down, in and out, and you keep going around your hand. Nice, easy breathing. And for people who like to touch things while they're doing those breathing exercises, you'll always have your hand. And if you're somewhere, maybe you're out and about and you're feeling a bit anxious, you can always just do that along your hand while you're breathing. Belly breathing is that taking in a breath into your belly and imagining it's moving out like a balloon. Not too much, but just enough so that you're getting a good bit of air into your belly. And that's really calming. So you imagine that you're breathing in and your belly's moving out, filling it up. And you can pause and then blow out. And those are things that you practice, not just when you're anxious, but whenever you think about them during the day, because they will keep you calm. And there won't be a huge, big rise up to anxiety if we're keeping ourselves calm throughout the day. Here's a nice strategy called square breathing. You can see some great stuff on YouTube, and there's the address for that. Here's some more for people who like to watch things while they're doing things. Triangle breathing is lovely. It's where the triangle runs out slowly into all the other shapes and moves in again while you're breathing in and out. And then Nathan Pyle has done some lovely little visual GIFs on breathing. Again, like the triangle breathing, it's the movement is very calming. So you move in and out. You might have your own calming techniques as well. Some people say drawing is very calming, writing, scribbling, coloring, music, having your pets, reading, walking, exercise, your special interests, any other ideas you have, things that keep you nice and calm. Stimming is very good for keeping you nice and calm, and people find that they do more stimming when they're anxious, so their bodies can be nice and calm. And there are other calming techniques that you can try. Mairead, the occupational therapist where I work, gave me some of these ideas from the stick kids. So you could massage your hand. One I do is hand massage. I do that a lot when I'm anxious. And I'd also use a little bit of therapy. And if you don't have therapy, blue tack is great for doing a little pinching and squeezing. Self-squeezing is something else I do if I'm very anxious. That's a nice one to do. And the other ones are there. Gentle helper squishes. Somebody will help you with that. Somebody will help you with the blanket tortilla, the roll and squish. So these can be very calming because deep pressure, that pressure into our joints, calms our body down. Thinking strategies are another way of us coping with thoughts, the thoughts that are happening in our heads. So we remember that anxious and worried thoughts are just thoughts. So here are some ideas for dealing with them. You can imagine that your thoughts are like clouds. A worried thought is a cloud. Imagine it just floating away while another thought comes along. Another good strategy is scale of the problem. Imagine that your problem is on a 1 to 5 scale. Is it a 2? Is it a 5? When we're anxious, we can have a lot of thoughts floating around in our heads. Maybe we can pick out some of those, write them down, and think to ourselves, are all my thoughts 5s, where 5 is really bad, really big worry? Are some of these small worries that I don't really have to worry about, and I don't need these in my head? So the 5s, you can look at, is this really a 5 or is it a 4? So it's about scaling your thoughts. Is this a really big problem or is this a small problem? That can be helpful. The zones of regulation is a great way of connecting our bodies to our feelings and what we're thinking as well. So some people like that program from the zones of regulation. For example, the blue zone is where our body moves slowly. We're tired and we might be bored. And it's a good way of figuring out what's happening. If we look at what our bodies are doing, can that tell us what we're feeling? Because sometimes some people find it really hard to kind of figure out their feelings and what they are feeling. So this is one way of helping. Another thing I think is really useful is to learn about your inner dialogue. So this is a fancy way of saying the conversation you have in your head. Most people do, I think, have a kind of a conversation in their head. And one side you might have nice thoughts, so what we call the inner coach, who says, well done, you did a great job there, that's super, you're really good at maths. On the other side, you might have that inner critic who's always saying unkind things, like you're stupid, nobody wants to play with you, they don't like you, you're no good at anything. So a lot of us have that as well, that kind of one saying nice things, one saying not nice things. When we're anxious, that inner critic can be the louder voice. We hear a lot more of the unkind stuff. So think about that. Those unkind thoughts are just thoughts. Remember that you are doing really, really well. You're doing your best. You're trying your hardest. You're great. Just sometimes when we're anxious, we don't feel great at all. So let's try and see if we can remember more of the good thoughts than the critical thoughts. Sometimes it helps to write things down so we remember them better. These are some good strategies, again, from Sharon at Autism Journeys. Remembering what's in my control and what's out of my control. Sometimes when we're anxious, we feel we're responsible for everything, but we must remember that we are only responsible for one small bit of what happens in life. Let's say 15%. So let's write down the things that we can control and the things that are out of our control. What's out of our control is what we're not going to worry about. We can do nothing about it. Maybe we should just worry about minding ourselves and our well-being and helping with our anxiety. Another good way of looking at it is like the feelings line, the anxiety curve. which just shows us that anxiety goes up and it goes down. It might be a good idea to look at your own anxiety and just see what it's like when it's going up the curve, because maybe if we can catch ourselves somewhere before it gets too big, we can put in some nice strategies that stop it getting too big and really unpleasant. Sometimes we need to get more help because anxiety gets too big, and this happens for some people. So we might go to a psychologist or another trained professional to learn strategies to cope. We might go to a specialist service because we might need medication just for a while to take some of that anxiety away, so we can use our other good strategies. So what people often do if they're very worried about anxiety is they might go and talk to their doctor, their GP, who will give them some good advice about what to do. So I want to thank you for watching and listening, and I hope that was helpful. Thank you and goodbye.